Okay, welcome to Divine Anarchy. This is what you are watching, Divine Anarchy with Matthew Mansell. I'm the host, Matthew Mansell. You are watching this live on Voluntary Virtue Network, started by Michael Shanklin. And I want to thank Voluntary Virtue Network for this opportunity to allow me to speak to you, the listener. And I want to thank you, the listener, for giving me a chance to communicate to you. First of all, I want to start the show by giving you a little bit background about me, because I am most likely new to most of you. So, first of all, I was raised in a conservative Christian household, where generally politics was not really discussed at home, periodically, but not really. However, in middle school, I was more or less got into it, especially in late middle school and high school. I was very interested in politics, generally due to who I listened to, particularly the evangelicals like John Hakey and Jack Van Impe and others. I was more of a conservative, and because of family values as an evangelical I was a social conservative and staunch neoconservative, being pro-Israel and a Zionist to the max. In fact, there was so much a neocon that I practically called for nuking Iran and committing mass genocide against the Iranians. And it was unashamed, and I did so unabashedly with the motto, kill them all and let God sort them out. For the protection of Israel, right? Protection of the ally of the U.S. Somewhere around the year 2008, 2010, between those years, I changed, or started to change. My neoconservatism came into question due to me having learned more about what conservatism is, its philosophy, and figuring out that neoconservatism really wasn't conservatism. It was the antithesis of conservatism. That war did much more harm to the American people than, or really any people, the neocon would want you to believe that it's the liberal policy that helps grow big government. Something conservatives generally do not think about. But much of this changed due to the fact of the Wall Street bank out. To the bank bailout under Bush began, and I also learned in college, took a econ class as part of my general studies, right? So that led me to realize that, well, certain policies such as bailing out companies and what have you are bad for the economy, and spending too much and pumping money into the system will lower the amount that the dollar is worth, etc. I also, through having watched Fox News, one of the commentators on there that I watch daily was Glenn Beck. It is through Glenn Beck nightly show called Glenn Beck, tells you how narcissistic these guys can be. They call the shows after themselves, such as Bill O'Reilly, the O'Reilly Factor. Anyhow, Sean Hannity shows Hannity, but that's going down a rabbit hole. But I was watching Glenn Beck, and he actually seemed to open my eyes to many things as well. one of which is the progressives and how progressives have invaded both political parties. And it is through those policies that government grown. But one of the people that felt that periodically he had to either leave of absence because he was sick or whatever. He had several people fill in for them. One of which is a judge by the name of Andrew Napolitano, who was a libertarian judge. He later got his own show on Fox Business, in which he covered news and other stories on his show Freedom Watch, and he also tied it all into libertarianism and freedom. But it is through his show that he came to interview Thomas E. Woods Jr. on the issues of nullification and other things, such as the markets and why it crashed, so the Austrian business cycle theory. And so I was introduced to Thomas E. Woods through Judge Andrew Napolitano's show, Freedom Watch. Well, it is through then, having heard of Judge Thomas E. Woods, I went online, looked him up, listened to many of his lectures. As a result of watching his lectures, I immediately fell in love with the Austrian theory of the business cycle and Austrian economics. And I wanted to learn more about that. So it is through those means that I learned it out. The Ludwig von Mises Institute, with the Austrian economists such as Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard. In fact, Murray Rothbard's book, he on top of being a great economist, he's an excellent libertarian of the Anarcho-Capitalist variety. His book, For a New Liberty, a Libertarian Manifesto, was the first libertarian book I've ever read. So that is my background, and how I became a libertarian. It is through research of Tom Woods, or through the lectures of Tom Woods and associates, having been such as Walter Block and Stephan Kinsella and what have you, and a great number of other people. It was through Tom Woods that I come to hear of Ron Paul, the good doctor and congressman who ran for president in 2011. It was during his 2012 campaign. It really started in 2011. I still had some neocon baggage, such as I disagreed with Ron Paul on his stance of Gitmo and torture, and somewhat of his stance on immigration. To explain what I meant by that is, during this time, I overall agreed with Ron Paul on economics and even on non-interventionism, his view on war during the time. I disagreed with him in his view of, I believe, Gitmo or Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, the prison that we had there, a torture prison that I believe that should remain open, and that there should not be any civil trial. If any trial were to have it, to be done in a military tribunal. And I agreed with Ron Paul that waterboard was torture, but I disagreed with him that it should have been used. My attitude was, okay, yeah, waterboard is torture, so what? These are prisoners of war, and we should treat them like prisoners of war. It was actually Ron Paul's argument that, who designates these guys as terrorists? This becomes circular reasoning. The government then you're judging the guy before the fact, right? It is that type of argument that persuaded me around to that. It's also a moral argument about the use of force. But I'll get to that in just a second. On immigration, Ron Paul did not believe there should be a wall being built or what have you. I disagreed with him on that during the time period. Later, when I became an anarchist, that is when I realized immigration is just a sham. Borders are nothing more than a imaginary line drawn up on a map by politicians, and thus are invalid. So I now advocate an open border policy. But back then, I was very anti-illegal immigration and believed that, and I also believed in the whole boogeyman that we have the war on terrorism and that with an open border or not a very strict closed border, terrorists could easily roll in and blow Dallas up or something, right? So the way you combat that is by building a wall, erecting a wall, and security, and what have you. Ron Paul's argument that the problem with that is that a wall that keeps people out can also keep people in. That persuaded me over and said, oh, that makes sense, of course. So we dissolved that. It was actually during Ron Paul's campaign that I actually became a full-blown anarchist. Actually, I became an anarchist philosophically, but a minarchist pragmatically. What I called philosophical anarchism, pragmatic minarchism. And generally what this means is that you use the minarchism, the view that there should be a small government. You aim to shrink the state ever so slightly toward the direction of minarchism, hoping that people will see that the free market works in all these other areas that they thought were not possible. And hey, if it works over there and in all these other areas, it's going to work in the area of law and justice, and just as well. So that's what I meant by pragmatic minarchism. You wean people off the state by shrinking the size of the state. That may still be good strategy, but that's a different issue for a different other day. But I became a voluntarist, a philosophical voluntarist, or anarcho-capitalist during the 2012 presidential election or campaign. During the primaries, really what convinced me prior to becoming an anarchist, well, I was a minarchist. I listened to a lecture by Larkin Rose called "You Are Not the Boss of Me." Very great lecture, but there was I think it was a group related to the with similar videos. Actually, one of videos that based off of one of his lectures dealt with what is government. It challenges the individual to describe what government is, because they had other videos called "The Philosophy of Liberty," and it is through those videos that I realized that the market can provide issues of justice and property and arbitration and dispute resolution. The criminal justice can be done on the market, and national, quote, defense can be done. A communal defense can also be provided on the market. And it's through the utilitarian argument that fully pushed me into libertarianism, or into anarchism. So now that we have done that, I've given you the background of who I am, what I was, of the neocon, and now I am a anarchist. So basically, you have a background into what I am. Uh, Unlike most anarcho-capitalists, I'm not an atheist. I'm a proud and devout theist. So my theism does play a huge role into my view as an anarchist as well. I genuinely 100% believe that the state is a deity. It's a religion. Statism is a religion, and it should be treated as such. And my view is that God is against the state, is an enemy of the state. But that is, I'll deal with that later. But suffice to say, my view is that the only consistent atheist is the atheist that is also an anarchist. That the only true monotheists were either monotheists who reject the state altogether, so they are anarchists, or atheists who happen to believe in the state. These are the only two consistent group of monotheists, and the only consistent group of atheists. Now I've dealt with my background, what I believe, or how I come to the position that I have come to. I will now go into what libertarianism is. And the reason why I'm doing this is because most people seem to have this view, I think the quite absurd view, or tend to oversimplify libertarianism, especially politicians within the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party was founded by a guy by the name of David Nolan and also by Marion Rothbard. And it was done for the sole purpose of educating, because most Americans don't pay attention to politics, quote unquote, until every 2 to 4 years when a politician is running for office. So during the electoral political cycle is when most Americans start paying attention to politics. And even then, it's at a distance. The only thing they know is what the politicians are actually saying. So Murray Rothbard and David Nolan created a political party in order for libertarians to run for office and in order to educate the masses. The libertarians have since then tried to get into office, right? In order to become elected officials in government. It worked on some levels, smaller levels. It hasn't worked to the national level as of yet. But there's something to be said of politics that, yes, it can be a valuable educational tool. It was certainly the case in 2008, 2012, when Congressman Dr. Ron Paul ran for president for the Republican Party, or ran to be the nominee for president on the Republican primaries. Without his election, without his involvement in politics, without his running for president, I don't know how many people would be anarchists today. Certainly, they wouldn't be libertarians today. But so that's what and now many libertarians, in order to get elected, they try to appeal to the masses by trying to convince them that they themselves are libertarian. And they do this by oversimplifying what libertarianism is, such as Governor Gary Johnson, who ran for president on the Libertarian Party ticket this last time in 2012, and it seems that he'll try to run again in 2016 on the Libertarian Party ticket. Over and over again, he defined libertarianism as speaking with a broad brush, fiscally conservative, and socially tolerant. While it is true that libertarians generally are fiscally conservative and generally are socially moderate to liberal or tolerant, that doesn't define libertarianism. That only tells you what types of policies libertarians pursue. That they pursue policies that, on the social strata, are generally liberal or tolerant, such as either getting government out of marriage altogether, or legalizing marriage, or legalizing pot, what have you, and among other groups of social issues. But they're also pursue economic policies that are conservative, more conservative than the Republican, mainly getting rid of the taxes altogether, or implementing a fair tax, a flat tax, or some variant of what's called the fair tax, which is the national sales tax. But definitely an improvement over the current system. So, and there's a whole bunch of other free market-oriented reform that the Libertarian Party has always been in favor of. The well is true that libertarians pursue policies that are conservative, fiscally speaking, and pursue policies on social issues that are generally considered moderate to liberal. I say moderate to liberal because there are certain topics that are debated, even by libertarians. So there are libertarians who are pro-life and believe that government should use force to stop people from having abortion, or at least to believe that the state should be doing that, because abortion is, in their view, if the fetus is a child, a living human being, then to abort it is murder, and that's a violation of the non-aggression principle. And thus, people should not murder. Very simple. Straightforward. And there are libertarians who say, oh, we're pro-choice, such as the late Murray Rothbard. And there are other issues where libertarians disagree widely on it with each other. So moderate to liberal would be the best way to describe the policy that libertarians generally see. But speaking about what kind of policies libertarians aim toward having is not a description of what libertarianism is. Libertarianism is a philosophy. It is a political and moral philosophy that says that it is morally wrong to initiate violence against your fellow human being. This is called the non-aggression principle, or against another property. And the key word is initiate. Libertarians are not against violence. They're against initiatory violence. That is, we are opposed to you starting violence this is called aggression. The use of physical force against another's property, being it their own person or an external property like land. Which gives you a corollary rule to this, and it is the principle of self-ownership, namely that you as a human being own yourself, and then that you come to own a scarce resource by becoming the first person to appropriate that scarce resource. And then the other means to come to own an external tangible property is through voluntary trade, being that is the only way that the only consistent means of acquiring property with the while respecting the non-aggression principle. So now that we've defined what libertarianism is, we have to give libertarians are generally broken up into three categories, depending upon whether or not you believe in a government. Really two. whether or not you believe in a government and whether or not you don't. Generally, the one that said there should be a government or there is a government generally fall into two categories on how much government they believe should exist. The first category is what's called the classical liberal or classical liberalism. This approach or this view of government believed that governments existed or exist and are instituted in order to protect inalienable rights of the individual. Mainly, they believe that you as a human being are born into this world by virtue of your humanity, either because humans are the most evolved human being on the planet, or because a divine agent such as God endowed us with these particular these rights. These are called inalienable rights. So by virtue of our humanity, or by virtue of God giving it to us, we from birth have acquired or have certain rights that pre-exist government entirely. These are called inalienable. That no tyrant, no government, no king, no priest, anyone has given them, nor can they take away from you as an individual. And that among these rights are the right to life. So you have a right to live your own life free from interference. So a right, by the way, in classical liberalism, it means a negative right. So something that it means that you have a right to do acts without being interfered with by any other person. So a right to free speech means you have the right to speak your mind, to use your own scarce resources, however you want, in this case the mouth, to say whatever the hell you want to say, and everyone else around you is obligated to not interfere with you or to punch you in the mouth. Government generally rights, when dealing with government, mean that government cannot trespass upon your rights. They ought not to keep you from speaking your mind. And there's a whole list of other rights that government should not be crouching upon, or anyone else in society for that matter. So life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness or property. And that government then are instituted in order to protect those rights that are yours by nature, that are inalienable to you. The next one is minarchism, and I only have a few minutes left, which says that there should only be three reasons, or government should exist in order to protect property. So you have police and military to defend property from external aggressors and internal aggressors, and a court system in order to arbitrate disputes, including disputes with that it finds itself in dispute with. Then the third is anarchist, which we at Voluntary Virtues are hold to and ascribe to, which says that government by very nature aggress against property and initiate violence, and because it initiates violence, it is immoral. Thank you for watching the Divine Anarchy. You can find my shows every Saturday at this time, 10 to 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, Saturday evening, here on the Voluntary Virtues News Network. For future shows, my show will be dealing with current events, and periodically I will also be seeking to do interviews with people. Like next week, I will be seeking to do an interview about with the founder of LGBT for gun rights, and about current gun laws. So again, thank you for joining. You, the listener, make this possible. Thank you for Voluntary Virtue Network for giving me a shot and a chance to express my views and to bring what I have to the table of the voluntarist community. With that being said, Shalom Aleichem. May God bless, and may the light of liberty shine upon every one of you. Peace out.